Hello folks, welcome to Tech channel. Today we are going to learn how to use functions in JavaScript. On previous tutorial we learned how to use data types in JavaScript, and today just let's start directly how to use functions. Before actually showing you how to use functions in JavaScript. So what is a function? Function is actually a block of code that you would write and then will allow you to perform some specific task. And what does that mean? For example, let's just declare something. We have two ways to declare functions in JavaScript. The older syntax is ES5 syntax or the modern syntax which is 6 syntax. Let's start with the older one. So you will call the function key name, so you need to have called this call write function, and then the function name in this scenario, let's call it fun name. And usually in JavaScript is this format, this format called camel case, and this is a best practice or more convenient for all developers. They understand this format, and then you would open this parenthesis here, this parenthesis. Inside this parenthesis you can pass something called params. So you can pass this params down to this function, and then you can use them inside this scope. So opening this curly braces and closing that here, you have to do this, and this called the function scope. So you can do any logic inside this function. This first function that how to declare using all the syntax or ES5 syntax. And then after this here, let's use a new syntax for the same function. So you would declare the same as you declaring a variable, but it will first add the function name, then equal, then this parenthesis, then arrow, then this curly braces, which is the same function. And so if you try highlight here, even this will tell you that the function already declared at the top here. And also you cannot declare the two functions with the same name, and this same for variables. Actually you will not be able to declare two variables with the same name, so you have to declare two different names. So let's just comment out this here. As I mentioned, it is a set of blocks that will allow you to perform a particular task. So that this is a block of the code. And what's the point of having this function? Why we should have function in JavaScript? So this will answer part of this coming actual implementation. Let's, for example, this instead of name, I'm going to call it divider. This divider, I would expect to give it a number and then try divide it to, for example, to itself. And as I mentioned, inside this parenthesis, we'll expect a params. So this params can, for example, first param, let's call it param A. And let's add also param, second param, call it param p. And then inside this function I need to do some logics. Inside this function I can return a value, or I can do some particular task without actually returning. But in this example, let's just return, we need to divide this A divided by B, and then add that here. And let's just add some code here so we can see that on the browser. Let's add h2, and then inside here let's divide 10 by 5, for example. So this all just a text to display for you on the browser, so to understand what this line will do. But what's important here is the function or the JavaScript logic. So we'll be inside this curly braces, which we need to call this function. And how to call actual function in JavaScript, you need to call the function name and then a parenthesis. This is the first way how to call actually a function name, or how to call a function in JavaScript. You would call the function name then parenthesis here. And as you see here, we expect to have two params. The first param will be A and second one B. And as we say it here, we need to divide 10 by 5. Let's just pass the first param will be 10, then comma, and then the second param would be 5. And if we save this and go to the browser, and that's 10 divided 10 by 5, which equal 2. For example, if we need to repeat the same line to divide, for example, 5 by 10, just change this here, 5 by 10, and here 5, and here 10. So if we save this, now that is half. So divide 5 by 10 is half, or 0.5. So that's the point of having a JavaScript function. If we don't have this function, we need to do this logic so every time. So that would be, instead of this, would be just, you need to say 10 divided by 5, then 5 divided by 10. For example, imagine if you have like tens of this line of this like logic. Instead of repeating this every time, you would just have this function to do this logic for you. You will pass that parameters, and then automatically that will be done in only one line instead of like duplicating this many times. That's the point of having a function, to avoid duplication and to have repeated code. So that, let's just undo this back. That is reverted back. Let's next line. Let's for example divide 20 by 10, for example 20 by 2. And next example, actually, to call the function, this is the first example how to call it, but also you can assign this variable this function to a variable, and then you can use that variable value later. Const, for example, if let's call it result, and then assign it to that function, and then here pass the parameter 20, and then here 2, and then you can call that variable instead of the function directly here. So it's still this one way, also different way how to call the function in JavaScript. If we save it, then come to the browser, the 20 divided by 2, which is equal to 10. And also inside the function, actually first let's just change this function to be called divider fun. So and just changing the name, it will not affect anything. And also inside the function we can declare a variable, and for example call it 0, and this variable actually will be accessible inside this block only. You will not be able to access it outside. Let me also actually update this name here. I was showing that because I changed the name. So this variable, if you declare any variable inside this function scope, will not be accessible outside here, but if you have a variable outside, you can access it inside the function. So and that, for example, just if you set minus, you can also actually say minus 0, which will do nothing. If you go to the browser, everything keep as it was before, because 10 divided by 5 is 2, 9 minus 0 will be 2, still 2. And that just how to declare a variable and what's inside the function. And this actually will be reserved only inside that for that function, will not be accessible outside to anything else. But if you this is declared outside here, then you would actually access it in inside this function, and also you can access it outside. So still that this called global variable, and this called local variable. This will call a local variable. I will add actually documentation for all this. I will leave it for you so you can come later and try just to review it again. Next example for a function that will not return a value. For example, let's call a function, call it display alert. And this function basically will expect not to return anything, but it will display alert instead. So inside this function, just let's add alert. This alert here, alert function. So this exists by default in JavaScript. So for example, if you need to display alert message on your browser, so we need to see this message on the browser. Just say, student, hope you are enjoying the tutorial. If I save this one, let's just call the function, because if we didn't call the function and come to the browser, reload will not see anything. You have to call that function. And as we mentioned how to call a function, you need to call it with the parentheses. If that function will expect any parameters, you need to pass that parameters. But in this scenario, you will not expect any parameters to pass through. So basically, we just call it like that, and then semicolon at the end. Save it, come to the browser, and as you see that, say, hi student, hope you are enjoying the tutorial. So this is one of the way how to call the functions. And also the last one, actually, to call the function itself automatically by just wrapping like this way, and at the end here adding in parentheses. This is called automatic function call, and then or just double parentheses, so that automatically without even reloading the browser, it will calling itself. As you see that it's just continuously calling itself. But if I remove this second parentheses and save it and try reload the browser and try press OK, then it will disappear. So that also one of the different way how to call a function with the so automatic call. Basically, you need to duplicate this line. So this is automatic call, and this is just the normal standard way how to call a function. I will add that documentation for this actually, and I will add more documentation for all this line. and let me bring some documentation for this. Already have it ready. So instead of all of this, let me just take that out and add this here. So this is just a documentation for you. This ES6 syntax function and this ES5 syntax functions, and here is a local variable, and that will be accessible only inside this block here, inside this function scope. This is also called scope, and here is how we return parameters, and same is just using different syntax. And also you can declare a function as a variable. And last one, you don't need to return anything inside the function, but you can, for example, call another function. In this scenario, we are calling alert functions, and also we said how to call a function, and this is the third way how to call a function automatically. And this is how to use a function, how to declare a function in JavaScript. So if you didn't subscribe until now, try subscribe so you get all new videos and tutorials. Thank you for watching, and see you in the very next tutorial.